So, what would you do if you were rejected from your dream university, despite working as hard as you could, and even reaching some personal bests, breaking personal records in your own academic career, and you finding out the day that announcements pop out that you're supposed to be accepted or rejected, you get a letter that says, "I'm sorry, but we've decided to move on to other candidates." What would you do if you're in such a situation? Well, I don't know about you, but if you stick around for this video, I'm going to be able to tell you what I did and how I was able to process that kind of, for lack of a better term, failure. But as we go on throughout this video, you're going to understand why I don't prefer to call it a failure. So we need to start somewhere else. We need to start at the very beginning of the story so we can understand how I got to where I got and how I dealt with what was basically a gut punch for my entire academic career. We'll start in 2025 because that's when my final year of high school started. And for the country that I live in, which is South Africa, and also for the area that I lived in, grade 12 was really the year where you really had to focus and think about where you were going to be the next year because you were not going to be in high school anymore. So you needed to be very specific and you needed to be very thoughtful about what kind of university you want to go to, what kind of degree you want to pursue, and the marks and the academic abilities needed for you to qualify for those universities and degrees. So for me, it was a bit of a learning curve, is what I would say, because the issue that you might find with this kind of decision being thrust onto 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds for some, is that it's a very, very big decision that from our perspectives at that age, it really does look like I'm going to have to decide what the rest of my life is going to be like, what kind of job I'm going to pursue, and also I'm also going to have to think about what this university needs from me and what the best possible university is for me and if I can actually reach those goals. So there's a lot of pressure behind the decision and a lot of pressure behind us giving ourselves the power to make that decision. Power in the sense that you get really good marks and then you're able to qualify for that university. But the point is there that we get a very pressure filled year. And for me, I definitely felt the pressure. While this was my best year academically, like this is when I achieved the most and I broke the most barriers when it came to my own academic skills and my own academic performances and test marks and all of that. This is also the year where I felt the most burnout and also the year where I really felt the most pressure to do really, really well. And I guess maybe that's a conversation for another day, the idea that maybe there are some people like me, who need pressure to perform at their best. But the point was, I spent term after term because on this side we have your first term, your second term, which usually are 3 months each. Then you have your third term and your fourth term. Third and fourth are in the second half of the year. First and second are in the first half of the year. The first term is not easy, but of all the 4 terms, it's the easiest because that's when you kind of get eased into the idea that you're going to work a lot harder than you've been working throughout your entire high school career. You're used to going to school 5 times a day. Well, start getting used to the idea that you might start coming to school 6 times a week, maybe even 7 times a week. So that's just that learning curve that you deal with. And also, because you want to really, really do well in these subjects, you would apply more pressure on yourself to be like, I still need to do better at these subjects than I would have done last year so that I can beat the competition to get into the best universities in the country. So that was my mentality. And it took a lot. It took a lot of me not skipping school at all so I didn't want to miss work, doing homework as many times as possible. I don't want to say every time it was given because, to be honest, I did miss homework here and there. But if you ask for the rate at which I was able to complete homework when it was given, I'd say I would complete 94% of the homework I was given, just as a guesstimate. So doing all of that, actually taking the homework seriously as I could, and also trying to manage my sleep, trying to make sure I ate healthily. And once more, whenever I did have setbacks, I needed to push forward from those and try to do better in my next opportunity to get good marks in a test or an exam. Like, there's a lot going on, and for me, I put a lot of work and I put a lot of time and I put a lot of passion, I want to say, into my academics and studies because I really wanted to get into that top one university, which we're going to call University A. Let's just say it's the best university in the country. And it's ironic as well because heading into grade 12, I had no knowledge of what the power rankings of universities were and why a big university is really important. I was only really enlightened by that by my friends to be like, hey, you need to think about what university you want to go to. You have to think about which one is the best in the country and try to push yourself to go there. And also just people in general, they were just saying, hey, mentals, you got a good head on your shoulders. You got a good head on your shoulders. We really do think you're a really smart person. So you need to go into these three universities at minimum. If you don't go into these three universities at minimum, it's failed potential, which funny enough, that's a conversation in and of itself, the idea of trying to live up to people's expectations and how you get to that point. But I put that all on my shoulders. I put that all on my back. I put my head down. I worked hard. I studied. I grinded. And to the point where there were a few times where I got sleepless nights, maybe one or two sleepless nights throughout the entire year. But I really did do my best to make sure that I had 8 hours of sleep every night, or at least on average. And if you are a student who is in grade 12 or in a very important academic year, I know at the time it might seem beneficial to sacrifice sleep for study hours. But I promise you, in the long run, it is really not. You do gain a lot more from being able to regulate and control your sleep and getting 8 hours. But now we move on. I do all of that. I become the best student in my school. I become, we call it the Duck Scholar, but I think in where I'm guessing my audience is, it's known more as a valedictorian, but basically the top one, the best student in your school. I became that. So for my other university choices, because I applied to various other universities around the country, three of them I was going to consider going to my dream school, another school that was rivaling it, and then another school that was also rivaling it, but maybe it's top three. If these other two are top one and top two, these are like listed on number three. And then other general universities like the one in my same province, all of that, that I was never going to go to as a first choice. So the day arrives, actually before the date, it was the night before, because once we're finished writing our final exams, we don't really get to see how much we get. We just have to wait for the results to be posted across the entire nation. So there's a month in between us writing our final high school paper and those results being put out. And I don't know how obvious it was, but I know that for me internally, every time I thought about my results and my marks, I was a stress ball, because I knew that if I didn't perform as well as I hoped to perform, then I was going to get a very big nugget of disappointment, because I'm not going to get into universities I wanted to get into. But I did try my best to not think about that too much. But whenever I did, I was definitely a stress ball of nerves. So the day arrives. It's the night before, and my parents, they can tell that I can barely sleep. I could barely sleep, to be honest. I had to play video games with my friend the whole night, and then basically force myself into sleep at around 2, 3 a.m. And then knowing that the next day I needed to go and fetch my results, because I was nervous. I wanted to know, am I going to make it or am I going to not? And I get my results, and my results please me. Like, I'm very happy with my results. And the thing is with these results is that some of the universities, they moved a lot quicker with giving me offers than other ones. All the universities that were not my dream school gave me an offer, but my dream school didn't. I had to wait for them. So basically, now I'm sitting at home, and from the perspective of logic, the other schools that accepted me are both top 3 or maybe top 5 in the country. So the idea is, okay, I could go to one of these and it's not going to be a big issue. And even my parents are trying to tell me, hey, this other one is taking a bit of time. Even if they don't accept you, it's still a good idea. It still would be nice for you to go to one of these universities. And I agreed with them logically, but for that sentimental sake, for this idea that I worked so hard to move into this university, to move for this specific course, like that was my guiding star, and that was basically the only reason why I pushed myself so hard, so far beyond the limit, to the point where I went to school when I could not even speak. There was a period of time when I couldn't even speak when I tried to. Like, my voice box was completely burned, but I still went to school. And then when I see that they're the ones taking the longest, I'm like, okay, we're going to wait for their specific day for when they release results, because their results came out on a different day to everyone else. That day arrives, and I'm pretty nervous as usual. Everyone is telling me, oh, no, like, don't worry about it. You surely got in. Your marks are really good. Your results are really nice. And contrary to the popular consensus at the time, they didn't accept me for my dream course. And that was a bit heartbreaking. I still tried to get myself into the university. I tried to pull out all the stops, tried to email people who were working there, emailing people who were going to handle the course I was going for, even talking to cousins and friends of cousins who were in the university, trying everything in my power to somehow sneak in. But none of it worked. And then I had to move on, and I had to think about where I went next. And at the time, I'm not going to lie, making the choice was a lot easier than I expected. In a strange sense, I still felt that level of disappointment to the fact that I didn't get into my dream university. But also, I still found a reason to be quite happy and grateful that I was able to work hard enough to make it into a top 3 and top 5 university. And If you ask me, I feel like that was the biggest part, or that was the biggest contributor in me being able to deal with not making it into my dream university. So if you're listening, that's also what I would like to offer to you. It's sometimes you need to think about the goal that you set. And it's this idea that you should shoot for the stars because at least you'll land on the moon. You need to think about the goal that you set, and you need to think about the fact that there are options beyond just success and failure. This isn't a binomial distribution where you can either get the event that you want or you just don't get the event that you want and all, and it's a complete failure. Because for me, while I did not get the event that I wanted, I did not get the absolute perfect success I wanted, there were still other fringe cases, and there were still other fringe cases. And in this case, it was the fact that I was still able to qualify for some really good programs in other universities. So I was able to just keep that in my mind as I'm heading into my first day. I worked really hard, and while it doesn't feel like it in my heart of hearts, logically, and when I look at it from the outside looking in, my hard work has paid off because I made it into a top university. And I'm going to give this as a bit of a teaser for another video as well. This is going to be a part 2. But I also realized that as I went through my first semester at this new university, the one that wasn't my first choice, something clicked, and it was the idea and it was the fact that whether or not I got into my dream university, it still didn't change who I am and who I am growing up to be. I was known to be a hard worker, someone who studied diligently, and someone who was able to help out other people when they needed help and ask for help from me, especially when it came to academics. And I'm still that person at a different university. I had big dreams and ambitious dreams of releasing novels, having published at least one novel in my life, maybe making good enough money to set myself up for a good life. I'm still on that track and I still have those ambitions at a different university than the one that I had as my dream university. But again, that's all going to be for another video. What I wanted to say for now was that I would say just don't think too hard about it. It's going to suck if you don't make it into your dream university. And maybe for some of us, we've been through that, and I'm curious to hear what it's like for you guys, what you have to say on the topic. But I promise you it's going to pass. Just keep working hard. Even if you don't get your perfect desired idea of success, you are going to get something out of that hard work, even if it's not, again, that perfect idea of success. Maybe you learn a lesson. Maybe, like me, you enter a good university anyway, and you just have to accept the fact that it's still a good university, even though it's not the one that you wanted. And most importantly, it doesn't decide anything about whether or not you are valuable as a human being, whether or not you're smart enough to have the life that you want, and all of that. It doesn't mean that at all. You can still be the same person in two different universities. Yes, you might meet a different flavor of people and have different additions to your character, but that core part of you, that part of you that has ambition, that can achieve those goals and work towards those goals, that doesn't depend and rely on whether or not you get into your dream university. And that's my message of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This one was a bit different. I had to step outside, so if you do hear birds chirping, my apologies, but I wanted to give this video a more nature-esque vibe. But yeah, that's it for me. I hope you guys found value in this video, and until next time, I'll see you.